Good afternoon, Rocketeers. I am going to start another day two lesson. I'm going to use a little bit of a different format today because I'm hoping to make these a little bit more interesting and worth your time. It should be pretty short on our day twos. So let's go ahead and get started. This was based on Sunshine Makes the Seasons, which was what we read yesterday. And I wanted to go over our data from the previous day two lesson. And I was excited by what I saw. This was from the Rocketeers that use the Google form versus the Jot form. I've noticed that Google Form's a little easier for me to pull data from. So this data is from just the kiddos who use the Google form. But from this data, I was able to see that you guys rocked it. I was super excited with the answers that I saw there. It seemed like most of you understood the skill that we worked on. So this one was, why did scientists believe that Mars would be similar to Earth? The first answer that I had there was scientists were able to observe living things on the surface of Mars using telescopes. That was a distractor for you guys. Scientists did observe the surface of Mars. That was said in the book, but it was not said in the book that they saw life, because that hasn't happened. B was Mars is one of the closest planets. No, sorry, Mars is one of the planets closest to Earth. So scientists thought that there would also be life on Mars. If you guys put B, give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. That is correct. And so there was evidence for that in the book, which I did post a screenshot of that page when you did this Google form. And it was on page 23, and it says Mars is the closest planet to Earth. So that was the evidence from the text. And then you were to use your schema, what you already know, which is sometimes when things are close together, they're usually similar. That's something that you might know in your brain, like, hey, these things are close together. They might be the same or close to the same. That number C was living things from Mars have visited scientists on Earth. No. Scientists have made up stories about Mars to explain why they saw the planet blank. I didn't get a screenshot of that last part, but that one is incorrect. It's true, but it's not related to life on Mars, and it wasn't really related to the question per se. So great job. That's a lot of you doing so well on this. Question 2 here is, why is the sun the most important star in the solar system? And again, the majority of you got this question correct, but there was a chunk of you that had a little misconception with this one. So this here is A was incorrect. It wasn't true based on the text. This was not actually said in the text. And that seems to be the biggest distractor there, was the sun is the largest solar star in the solar system. That's not what the text said that I gave you guys. B was a distractor. This is the sun is the star that is closest to Earth. This is true, but it's not why the sun is the most important star. C was the correct, because it said the sun is a star in the middle of the solar system. So 52.2% of you got that one correct. Give yourself another pat on the back, kiss your brain. Woo, good job. And then that evidence was on that page 8 that I posted with the Google form that said the sun is in the middle of the solar system. All right, question 3, why did Romans call the objects in our solar system planets? Here it shows that most of you, again, got this question correct, but there was a big distractor here, which was this first one here. So it says, the Romans thought the planets were bright stars shining in the sky. This is true, but it's not related to why they named the planets, why they called them planets. So it wasn't quite answering the question. So letter C here, the Romans noticed that planets were constantly orbiting around the sun. That one was the correct answer. And we saw in the book that they said planets mean wandering, and the planets are moving, wandering. So that was why they connected the two and they named them planets. So that would be the correct answer there. So make sure, really pay close attention to the question and use your schema. There, the schema was, you know, people like to name things after what they're like. So if the word meant wandering and we see that they're moving, then that would be an applicable name, right? All right, so remember quickly that I mentioned in the last video, as I'm starting these day 2 objectives, they are to work on skills to get you ready for 2nd grade. So we may or may not, oh, sorry, that's a little typo there. We may or may not to read new books on this day. Just depends on the objective that we're working on. So keep an eye out for these. Basically, I'll read a new book and then there'll be a day 2. New book and then a day 2. That's just what I called them. All right, so our objective for today to get you guys ready for 2nd grade is to identify basic similarities in and differences between 2 texts on the same topic or similar topics. So that's a lot of words. Basically, what is the same and different about books about the same / similar topics? So we just read 2 books about space, kind of. One was about space kind of in general, and one was about how the sun affects the seasons. And so there's similar topics, and now we want to find out what are the similarities in the 2 texts and what are the differences. So the what? Similarities, what is the same or connected between the 2 texts? So I put this little twins picture, these cute little baby twins. What's the same? The topic is what the text is about. So thinking about, I put this picture of this whole book open. It's like, what is the text all about? Illustrations are the pictures in a text. So that's why we have an illustration from one of our books. Descriptions are the details that are given about a topic. So what are we learning specifically about these different topics that we're reading about? Procedures we won't really get to today, but basically the steps that are taken to do or make something. Next slide. All right, how? Identify, so how are we going to do this? Identify the topic of both texts by asking yourself, what are both of these texts about? So that's like our first step. What are the 2 texts about? Thinking about those overall topics. Identify similarities between texts by asking yourself, what's the same about the pictures in both texts? What's the same about the details given in both texts? And what is the same about the steps taken in both texts? Again, we're not really going to get to that last one that talks about the steps. We're really going to be focusing in on the pictures and the details. Remember, great readers make connections between 2 texts on the same topic by identifying similarities, so things that are the same, between the illustrations, descriptions, and procedures in both texts. Lots of words. We're just going to be comparing two books to see what's similar and what's different. All right, watch me think. Say it with me, watch me. All right, first I'm going to identify the topic of each text, each of these books that we read. I know that the text What's Out There is all about our solar system, and Sunshine Makes the Seasons is all about why we experience the changing seasons on Earth. So those are our 2 books, and I just identified the topic of each of those books. Keep watching, okay? Next, I think about what is similar about the illustrations, descriptions, and procedures in the text. So I'm thinking, what made those books similar? There's more to my thinking, so keep watching. What's Out There includes many illustrations showing the different bodies in the solar system, such as the sun and the 8 planets. So when I'm looking at the pictures, I see lots of pictures of the solar system, and I see lots of pictures of the sun. Sunshine Makes the Seasons also has many illustrations showing the effect of the sunshine on days, nights, and seasons that we experience on Earth. Both texts use illustrations to show different information about bodies in our solar system, specifically the sun. Almost done. What's Out There describes the different bodies that orbit around the sun in our solar system. For example, the author describes the 8 planets, each follow their own path to travel around the sun at different speeds, and that it takes 1 year for the Earth to complete one orbit. Sunshine Makes the Seasons describes how our experience of daylight and temperature on the Earth changes during different seasons depending on the movement of the Earth around the sun. So, for example, the author describes how people experience summer when their location on Earth is closest to the sun, while they experience winter when their location on Earth is farthest from the sun. So this tells me that we're looking for the same, that the illustrations are a key similarity between the two texts because they both help me understand the importance of the sun. This also tells me that the descriptions are a key similarity between the two texts because they both describe the sun's impact on Earth. So those are things that are the same with these two books. The illustrations come to that same point where the sun is very important, and they help, all of the pictures in the books help me understand why the sun's so important. And then the descriptions, the words that the book is telling me about, really help me describe this, understand the sun's impact on Earth. So all I did there was I looked at the illustrations and I looked at the details that the books had, and I compared them, was like, hey, these things are similar. These things are the same. So on your Google Doc or your Jot form, I'm going to have you show me your thinking on the differences in these two texts. So be ready. Your question is going to be about the differences, okay? I can't wait. Make sure you check out your Google form. Thanks, guys.